Hi, gang. Well, it's October, and October could only mean it's time to bring out Ed Emberley's book of Halloween. So we'll be drawing from this for the next few weeks. We'll start today with the skeleton. You start with his eyes and put a couple of pupils in there. Square off his jaw and then put a little half circle underneath. Give him some teeth and the crown of his head. Now, these pictures we're drawing today, they're actually silhouettes. They're as if we're looking at the skeleton and there's light behind him. So ultimately, we're going to fill him in and he'll be black. Now, when you draw the skeleton, it's all sticks and balls. So to put his ribs in there, I'll add some steaks, 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 steaks. Now at his shoulders and his hips, you've got balls. If you got balls, you put sticks on them. Steak, steak. And we'll put steaks on his shoulders. Now we've got the upper arms. And at the end of those steaks, you have to put balls. Balls, balls, ball, balls. There we go. Steaks on balls. Now we've got a bunch of balls. We need steaks. Steak with a ball. Steak with a ball. Steak. Steak with a ball. Ball. Then a little curly line, and that's all we do for the foot. But for the hands, we'll draw all 5 fingers splayed out. We'll take a look at this later. All you have to know is when you create the hand with the fingers stuck out, you should be able to draw a circle around them. And that'll get it exactly the right length. So as I said, it's a silhouette. So it's as if the light is behind the skeleton and all we see is the shadow of the skeleton. So we'll fill in his skull, put a space between his teeth, and fill in the pelvis. Bing, bang, boom, you've got your skeleton. In fact, he's going to be kind of a fancy skeleton. We're going to give him a top hat. There we go. Now he's ready for a night out on the town. All right, my darlings, now let's go ahead and draw another skeleton. We're going to start the same way, but he's not going to be facing the same way. So do all the marks you did to start with, but we're going to fill him in, taking advantage of the fact that this is silhouette, see? And instead of facing forward, he's going to be facing to the side. There, the perfect crime. Now, even though he's turned sideways, because of the way we're drawing the ribs and everything, it wouldn't look right. If we tried to turn him sideways, he'd just look like a flat line. So instead, we're going to go ahead and draw the rib cage facing forward. And he's just got his head turned. That gives us the best of both worlds. So we got steaks. We put balls on the end. Steaks and balls. And where you've got balls, you put steaks. Steak. And another steak. Then at the end of that, you put a ball. And where you have balls, you add lots of steaks. So one curly little steak for the foots. And then steak, 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 steak. 5 fingers. And steak, 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 steak. For our skeleton running sideways. And you can have fun with your skeletons. They don't have to all look the same. In fact, this time, instead of giving regular eyes, I'm going to give them bug eyes. Just do a crisscross pattern. Ooh, very scary. And then you just keep going. instead of drawing the individual pelvis as two separate balls, I go ahead and draw the infinity sign, or maybe a sideways letter 8, or number 8. 8 is a number. Don't tell your parents I said that. There we go. And steeks and balls, steeks and balls. After you've drawn a couple of skeletons, you'll draw them fairly quickly. You just have to remember, wherever you got a ball, you put on a steek. Wherever you got a steek, you put on a ball. Steeks and balls, bing, bang, boom, we are done. But this is not a boy skeleton. It's a beautiful woman skeleton. She has a lovely hairstyle. There we are. Some people think that your hair and fingernails keep growing after you're dead, but that is actually not true. What happens is your skin shrinks after you're dead, and it looks like your hair and fingernails get longer. Ooh, scary stuff. Oh, and now it's time for one of my favorite scary drawings. Ooh, the very scary, well, it's not scary at all. The scary, no, it's not really scary. Very scary, somewhat chilling, I suppose. Skeleton dog. Oh, yes. So we start with his rib cage. Then we draw his eye, his big, creepy eye, and his big, creepy hip. Give him two little steak legs, and two more little steak legs. Give him a cone for a nose. And fill in his eyeball. And then make his silhouette. Ooh, scary. Just the bones of a dog. And he's got a skeletal tail that's in sections of bone. Oh. And finally, you have to put on some very sharp, pointy teeth because he's a scary skeledog. Kind of reminds me of Zero from the Nightmare Before Christmas, but that's a very old drawing lesson there. That's about 30 years before Nightmare Before Christmas came out. All right, let's combine last week's lesson, where we were drawing trains, with this week's lesson, and we'll draw a skeletrain. This particular train engine is a very old-fashioned one. It's like the very first trains that were ever made. So we start with the cabin, just as we did last week. It's got one big wheel, and it's easier to draw a symmetrical wheel by drawing the top and then the bottom. And two smaller wheels in the front. And the spoked wheels. And these wheels actually were spoked almost like wagon wheels. They didn't have the fancy solid metal wheels that you see on trains today. And the front wheels were just sort of on long poles. Doesn't even look like they were sturdy enough to hold it together, but they worked. So we're going to draw a bell. We're going to need a post to put that on. It looks like my engine is a little short. I have to have it out far enough that the cow catcher is not going to bump into my wheels. The cow catcher looks like it's a skeleton. Oh, a skeleton cow catcher for catching skeleton cows. I like the way he does the bell because you draw each segment a little bit at a time. It's easier to get a nice symmetrical bell. That's easier than trying to draw the whole thing with just one line. And we'll fill in the smokestack here. I'll come back and do the flanges on that in a little bit. Here I go, wasting all of my dry erase ink. You know how I hate to do that. But for these silhouettes, it's particularly important that you fill everything in. They look better. It's also a good reason to use crayons. Crayons are cheap. Pencil. You can draw with whatever you like. These lessons adapt to pretty much any medium. We'll put a roof on the cabin. And now I'm going to fill all this in. Oh, the waste. Oh, there goes all my ink. Now, if I do it carefully, I don't use quite as much ink. I'll use just enough to fill everything in. And while it is spooky to have a train that has no driver, driven by a ghost, in this particular case it's a skeleton, so we will have to include our skeleton engineer. Well, we can't see most of them. We're just going to draw his head, really. Give him a chin. There you go. Now, I hope you're drawing these pictures nice and big. Don't feel like you have to draw them as small as they appear in the drawing lesson. I'd like for you to draw them at least 4 times larger than what you see. And you'll notice I draw them really big on this little whiteboard here. But when you draw things big, it's much easier to get the details in. So draw them as big as you like. Touch up some of the details. Oh, I forgot to put on a headlight. He couldn't drive in the dark, and of course he wants to drive in the dark all the time. Scarier. Ooh, scary. Now, once again, we have to have a coal tender, so there's no room for the name, I suppose. We'll start with a nice rectangle. Everything worth doing starts with a rectangle, it seems. So make it a little shorter than the cabin of the train engine there. And just pull a straight line down. Circle that, add the spokes, put a couple of flanges, little triangles out on both sides. Once again, it's easier to get it nice and symmetrical if you draw one piece at a time rather than trying to draw the entire outline. And we'll go fill those in. Drawing my coal tender now. When I'm drawing, I usually entertain myself. I'll tell stories. Maybe I'll sing a little song, what have you. It's important when you're doing something like drawing a bunch of coal the way I'm doing here. You don't want your brain to get bored. You see, there are 2 sides of your brain. There's the right brain. The right brain does things like draw pictures. It's the spatial brain. You use it when you ride a bike. Stuff like that. Stuff that you don't have to concentrate on, that you just sort of do automatically. Visual stuff. But the left part of your brain is the part that does the talking. And so if you leave your left brain idle for too long, it might start saying things about your drawing. Oh, this isn't a very good drawing. That's not a straight line. This is no fun. We don't like drawing. We should do some math. Why don't we stop drawing and do something else? And when you hear that voice in your head, just stop a minute and say, hello, voice in my head. I realize that you don't think this is very much fun, but right now we're drawing. So you just relax. And if you like, why don't you tell a story? Why don't you sing a song? But don't bother me right now because I'm drawing. Yes. We tend to be our own most severe critics. And all I'm asking you to do is have fun. So don't worry about making your pictures be anything or do anything. Just draw. Now, I use my whiteboard most of the time for drawing these, well, whatever pictures. But it can be fun to draw, instead of black on white, to use a light color on a black background. This is my black whiteboard, I like to call it. That I can draw on it with these neon markers. So now, instead of drawing a silhouette of a skeleton, it looks like I'm drawing a skeleton. And you can see the bones, instead of seeing the shadow of the bones. I like the way this turned out. The camera actually picks up the color better than it looked as I was sitting there drawing it. So it came out much brighter. And that's good, so that you can see. And when I draw my skeleton, it's all steeks and balls. Every place there's a ball, you put a steek. Every place you see a steek, you add a ball. You draw enough steeks and balls, you've got your skeleton. So the foot bone connected to the ankle bone, and the steek bone connected to the steek bone, and the steek bone connected to the steek bone, and the steek bone connected to the steek bone, and the steek bone connect to a ball. Steek, ball, steeks, and a ball. Steek, 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 steek. And with that, we have our skeletal figure. Now, of course, I'm working on the whiteboard. There are lots of different media that you could work with. I like to draw these Halloween silhouettes on colored paper. So you can use yellow, which is nice and bright, or orange, so you get that Halloween feel. And if you like the reverse effect, you can use gel pens and draw right on black paper. Or try some chalk. That works great too on black construction paper. Hey, send me your pictures, kids.